our experiences. She, to this day, refuses to talk about it. It traumatized her to the point where she doesn't want to acknowledge any of those memories at all.
Interesting.
That's just my sister. I guess that's her perspective on everything. You want to say something about that?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, when people ask me that question, I tend to tell them that my experiences have been educational, and I tend to leave it at that, because in those educational experiences, I've been intentionally put in scenarios to learn what it's like, basically to learn how the other half lives. Because I have had experiences my earliest recollection being 4 years old. And while growing up as a child, adolescent, teenager, I got into a certain age where by the time I reached my early 20s, I started realizing that the things that were going on with my family, my mother, myself, my grandmother, being that it's a generational phenomena, and the meetings and group meetings that I was going to with, people who would call themselves abductees, it wasn't matching up with what I was experiencing. And I started realizing that the groups I was going to were really for victims. And I was having a hard time relating to that, even though I was empathizing with them and understanding their plight. I was like, what the hell's going on here? We're not coming from the same perspective. Something else is going on. We're on two different sides of the same story here. So that's when I started realizing that the more educational contacts I was having with extraterrestrials that were here for the benefit of humanity, the beings that I was coming in contact with would put me into scenarios to learn what was going on with the other side, the more vicious side, the more abusive side, so that I could understand it and see what was happening to them, even though they weren't my experiences. Because for me, the experiences were very empowering, but that wasn't the same that was happening with other people in my circle of UFO groups and paranormal groups and all of them. It always seemed to be this, victim mentality, what happened to them instead of what happened with them or what happened for them, which is a bit of a different perspective.
That is interesting. Now, I want to take either one of you. You flip the coin, and let's start with how old were you when you were first abducted? What was it like? And how were you abducted? Were you in your bed? Were you somewhere else? How did it happen?
Linda, go.
my very first memory was about, I'd say, between 3 and 4. I was in my bed. I used to wake up in the middle of the night when I was a kid, petrified of the dark, and I always had that feeling like I had just fallen into my bed. It was a very strange thing. And I would then walk from my bedroom to my parents' bedroom, crawl into bed with my mom, and fall back to sleep. Well, this one particular night, I got as far as the hallway in the doorway of their bedroom, and I saw like this glow in the hallway, and I noticed, at first I thought it was the dog's feet glowing, and as I got older I was like, wait a minute, dog's feet don't glow. So I have had 2 regressions, one by Dr. Mundy and one by another woman here in New Mexico, and I have since remembered that what it was 2 beings, 2 luminescent beings, standing in the doorway of my parents' bedroom. And I remember them telling me to go back to bed. It was telepathically, but I remember as a kid just going right back to bed. And that was the very first memory I have of alien contact.
Now, Linda, what did they look like?
Uh,
The best you can remember.
the best I can remember is that they had this luminescent bluish glow to them. They were small. They were not much taller than me, and I was a very tiny little kid back then. I'm only 5'2" now. I don't think they were more than 4 feet tall. Do not remember any features at all from that first group. When my sister and I were having experiences together as children in the 70s, my sister started calling them the Kings. Not sure why, and she still, to this day, has no idea why she started calling them that. I've since started calling them, over the years, the Elders. They have very pale skin, and some of them have hair. They all wear a white robe, and on the left breast there's this emblem that kind of looks like the Merkaba. I thought when I was younger it was the Star of David, but now I've since come to realize it's not.
Interesting.
But I've seen many, many other beings over the years, too.
How many different, well, you mentioned you've seen many different beings over the years. Well, I mean, how many different beings do you think you've seen? And have they drastically, different in physical, what they look like physically?
Yes. Some don't even have like a true physical form. I kind of relate it to like a jellyfish. The majority of them are human looking as far as a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. And then there's a very large praying mantis, about 10 to 12, maybe even 14 feet tall.
Now, the praying mantis, I got so many reports from people that claimed they were abducted, that they weren't very friendly with humans. What type of situation did you have with them?
She is kind of like my teacher. I've never had a bad experience with her. I mean, she's like a strict teacher. She's not the warm, fuzzy, friendly, but she's not malicious in any way either. It's like Rick said, it's all educational with her. It's very straightforward, to the point.
What is she trying to teach you?
That's a good question. Do you want to put that?
Sure. I actually take the time to describe her in one of my books in about as best detail as I possibly can. And my first awakening, realizing that she's always been there with me since childhood, was at the age of 21. And that's when I woke up to all this at that early age. And then I had a total recall of all the memories beforehand from about the age of 4 on, and realized these were never dreams. These were never bizarro, wacko nightmares I was having as a kid. They were real memories. But she is a matriarch of what I describe in the book as the Sisterhood, which is a multi-genotype, various alien species, including human, that are part of this group that basically serve as a go-between between the humans of Earth and the rest of the galactic community, the benevolent factions. Their main focus is gifted children or special children here on Earth, and making sure they don't fall into the wrong hands and get turned into something more abusive, but that are, raised the right way. She's been with me since early childhood, and she's one of the ones I describe in the book as the healers. She's part of an ancient primordial race of beings. There's not too many of them out there. She's pretty damn old to the point of a time frame that the human mind couldn't even fathom in terms of how old her race is, if you can even call it a race anymore. And she has a vested interest in what she refers to as the children of Earth, which she kind of leaves open-ended as to how she defines children. Could be adult, could be child. But I also know that her as, in essence, the kind of like the spiritual leader of the sisterhood, they have a very special focus on young, gifted children, hybrids and starseeds, indigos, what the Chinese refer to as the super psychic kids, and in the olden days, what they referred to as the Christ children or the Christ child, which is the same thing as the indigo today or the super psychic. So, and they've been watching over those kind of children since time immemorial to make sure that they don't fall prey to, for lack of a better term, the dark side, so to speak, the malevolent factions.
Interesting. Now, I got to ask you a question here. We're almost ready for break in 2 minutes for the radio stations. I have to ask you, when this was going on, Linda, at a young age, what did you tell your parents, or did you say anything?
My sister and I did not tell my parents anything when we were younger. My mother didn't know that anything was happening with my sister and I until actually 1995, when my mother started showing an open interest. She started going to this book club, which I found out shortly afterwards that they were reading books like Eric von Daniken and all those books. And I said, wait a minute, this is a UFO group. And my sister and I looked at each other and said, well, I think we got to tell her now. And we started telling her everything that happened since we were kids. And she looked at us and said, why didn't you ever tell me this before? Quite honestly, I always thought I was going to get in trouble. It was just seemed like something that, I don't know, I had to keep a secret. I did try to tell my friends a couple of times when I was growing up, and, I got those looks like, oh, Linda is a Martian. She believes in Martians and this, that, and the other thing. So I just stopped talking about it completely until 1995 when my mom showed an interest.
Well, Linda, I got a question I want to ask you. When they first came and started visiting you, did they give you an option that they were going to visit you, or did they give you an option you could go with them?
I don't remember having any options. To me, it was just they came, we did what we had to do with them. Either they were doing it in my room or they were taking us. I don't remember specifics, but it was, from what I remember, it was never an option.
Okay. Well, we're going to be, if you guys want to get a cup of coffee, or like me, I drink tea, we're going to be going on break. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. We're going to be back with Richard and Linda Smith. We're going to also, talk about The Kings Are Coming, their book. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be back, in 2.5 minutes or so.
I gaze upon the annals of time, one thing that comes through: we are not alone in this universe. It's a thought that rings true. Ancient cave dwellers drew spacecraft on the walls. It's a recurring theme. I've seen the same thing while walking late at night.